Hey guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another review and swatches and dupes for a Colourpop palette. The last one I did was for the Colourpop and the Child collaboration, so the Mandalorian collaboration, and I asked you on Instagram what type of video you'd like to see with the new Colourpop and Raw Beauty Kristi collaboration palette. I purchased this and received it and played with it, and since it is now sold out, I thought, well, I'll wait and take time to do more, I don't know, more tests, and instead of doing a first impression and swatches, just do a proper run with the palette. And you guys told me you'd also like some dupes because the color story of the palette maybe isn't all for you, but there are some nice tones that you're interested in. So in this video we're gonna do all of that together. I bought this palette at launch, which was in November somewhere, middle of November I think, and it sold out during the day or during the weekend when it launched. But they have already announced that the restock is going to be on the 11th of December. Now I don't know if they will restock again after that, but yeah, I wanted to put up this video before that because I think that if this color story is for you, the palette is worth it. That is the short review. It costs $20. It's available only at colourpop.com. If you have any questions on how that works with shipping and everything, just let me know in the comments. I can then follow up. This is what the palette looks like. It contains 12 eyeshadows, and it's in the same format as, for example, Dream Street, Good Sport, their usual 12-pan eyeshadows, eyeshadow palettes. They are small pans and they contain, it's a total of 14.2 grams, so just over a gram per shadow. The inspiration, as you can see from the packaging, which is gorgeous by the way, is the forest and mushrooms in the Pacific, in the state of Washington, which is the Pacific Northwest of America, of the United States, and that's where Kristi lives. I've watched Kristi for a very long time, and even though I don't watch her videos all the time and really anymore, something about first impressions as reviews that really irks me, but I still support her. She's just a really nice person. She worked really hard, and I did like better her content when she was doing the NYX Face Awards and being all much more creative with her content than just a standard beauty guru, but that's personal taste. I like her as a person and I wanted to support her. Plus, the color story is just so me. This is a mainly matte eyeshadow palette. It contains 2 shimmers right here and the rest is all matte. As I said in my first impressions on my Instagram stories, to me it could have been a fully matte eyeshadow palette. The shimmers are nice, but I love the color story and the mattes, and these are such unique shades that is fine. I actually made a mistake. There's not only 2 shimmers, but there's also a matte with glitter. I always forget those because to me they are mattes, but this one has some copper glitter right here. Now, formula-wise, I've used all of the eyeshadows, almost all on my eyes today, but I did multiple looks with this palette, so I used them in different ways, and I am super impressed with the formula of these. They the 2 dark shades that most speak to me, which are the green and the blue, perform really well. I have the blue blended out today on my outer corner, and I did a look with the green on my Instagram stories. They perform really well. All the light mattes, they're a bit not powdery, but they're very pigmented and they come up a little bit on the pan, but they don't make a mess. I think it's a very good formula. I really like it. Definitely some of my favorite dark mattes that I've used in a while. So well done Kristi and Colourpop with this palette. It contains my favorite like olive green shade and a nice orangey yellow that you can use, that your more rusty tones, and a nice dark chocolate brown that makes for that you can really create neutral looks with this as well. And then you have your cooler tone. It's not even cool tone, it's more, this is still a warm rose and berry right here. These are all my shadow tones. The shimmers in the palette, this gold is absolutely amazing. I'm wearing it in my inner corner today. It is one of those more chunky shimmers from Colourpop. It applies and it shines beautifully. Absolutely gorgeous. This guy right here instead, it is called Evergreen. It's what I have on my eyes today. To get this level of presence from the eyeshadow, I had to put on a white base for a cut crease and wet my brush and go on it with my fingers. Unfortunately, to me, this is a bit of a miss. It's not as duochrome as I'd like it to be. It's not as punchy as I'd like it to be. It's a bit meh. It's the only dot in the palette I find, and not, I think it's the idea is incorrect rather than the execution, because the eyeshadow in itself looks good and applies well, also dry, but it just doesn't have enough shine in it. And I don't know if that was on purpose or not, but this was a bit of a mess for me. On the other hand, I don't have anything this color in my collection, so you'll see that I found an alternative in my dupes. But this one could have gone out, to be honest. It's unfortunate, nothing more to do about it. But the rest of the palette is absolutely stunning, and as I said, to me, the mattes are what make it. I forgot to mention, but the packaging is completely in cardboard, and I think Kristi did it on purpose because she wanted it to be a bit more sustainable. And the cardboard box that comes with it, which is somewhere, looks exactly the same as the palette. So you have the beautiful cardboard exterior as well. It's so gorgeous. Names are on the back with a little bit of a shiny overlay on it, and I don't know, it's just so beautiful. The collection contained also 4 Super Shock shadows, which are topper shades, and she said because this is I wanted to do a matte palette and then add topper shades, because then you can transform your look. And it makes sense also, thinking that this shimmer isn't the punchiest, is to add a topper on it. I didn't buy them because I don't use Super Shock shadows. I'm very bad at it, and mine just sit in my drawers and never get used. Something to fix probably next year, but I didn't buy them. There were also 3 eyeliners, a green, a yellow, and a brown. I would love to have gotten the green and the yellow, but they were all sold out immediately. So those are my goals for the restock, actually. And there were also 2 Luxe glosses, which is the reason why I am wearing a neutral glossy lip today, is, I don't know, an homage to her and the collection. I didn't get those either because they're very translucent glosses, and I have other things in my collection that I can use, and I didn't feel the need for it. Now, let's get into the dupes, shall we? This is the palette I duped in my collection. And it wasn't difficult, but it wasn't also the easiest thing, in the sense I don't have infinite options for everything, mainly because I wanted to really match the undertones. Here is how they look side by side. And incredibly enough, as you can see, I have a weirdly shaped eyeshadow right here, which comes from the Gemini palette of Melt, because I don't have a green single shadow that looks exactly like this guy right here that's called Fiddlehead. It has quite an interesting undertone. I'll show you in the swatches, and I didn't have anything like that in my singles, which, I mean, you know how many green singles I have. That was quite surprising to me. Next to this single eyeshadow palette that I put together of dupes, I also wanted to pull out and compare the Natasha Denona Metropolis palette. Some of you have it, some of you don't, but to me, there's quite a lot of overlap in the greens, the deep greens and the olive green that is here, for example, the bright gold that is in here, the yellowy transition that is in here, you have the warm transition here, the browns, like something like this could also kind of dupe it. You have your chocolate brown, or yeah, also this guy right here, which is darker. I have to say there's quite a few things in here that you could pull to dupe the Raw Beauty Kristi palette. I'm not gonna do that because I don't know how many people actually own this, and I think the textures of the Metropolis palette are very different than the mattes of Colourpop, of course. But I just wanted to mention that this was a possible alternative. If you don't want to get Colourpop because it's overseas and you're afraid of customs, and you have this, I think you can just pull, these are magnetic as well, you can just pull them out and put them in a little palette and you have the same vibe of a palette and you don't need to buy the Colourpop one. So that was a mention, honorable mention, I guess. Now, pulling up my sleeves, it's so cold here that we have a heating in full whack in my beauty room, but I'm still cold, so I'm with the thickest sweater I own. My apologies if I look like a floating head. And did you see I put my Christmas tree? I still need to figure out where to do the rest of the decorations for this room, since I don't have my big drawer dresser there anymore, and there's a bed instead for my parents if they come visit, since the baby room is on the other side. Anyways, that is not interesting. Let's start with the swatches and comparisons. We start from the top left. The first shade in the palette is Puffball, and it is a mustardy brown, like a more yellow toned neutral. I picked Tiki Hut by Makeup Geek as a dupe, and as you can see, they're pretty close. Maybe not 100%. I think if I look at it more closely, I think Puffball is a little bit more warm toned and less gray than Tiki Hut, but this is very similar. And Tiki Hut you have both in the new rebranded version from Makeup Geek as well as the old one. So that is handy because you can still get it. By the way, did you see that incredible Makeup Geek sale that they're doing? The throwback sale? You can always use my code Alice's Beauty Madness for 10% off. Shameless plug here, but I really like their shadows and I use them all the time, so just for you to know. Next up is Chanterelle, which is a orangey yellow shade, and I picked Chickadee, but specifically Chickadee from the old version, the round pans from Makeup Geek, because the new one is slightly deeper and slightly more orange still. So you can see that indeed Chanterelle is still more yellow than Chickadee, but it's not a yellow yellow. It's still an orangey yellow, and I don't have anything that comes as close as Chickadee, but I think these are quite close. Next up is the warm rusty tone matte, which is called Rainier. I don't know where that comes from. She did a really good job in her explanation video to explain where all the names come from. Like the first two are mushrooms. There's gonna be more mushrooms, but and I picked the shade Morocco by Makeup Geek, and as you can tell, I really like Makeup Geek's matte and I use them a lot, so here it is. It's a little bit lighter and less dark than Rainier, but Rainier is much more saturated than any other rusty, warm-toned eyeshadow, and less brown than anything else that I have in this family. So I think Morocco is really the closest thing I could find. It's a bit lighter though than the one in the palette. Then we have Old Growth in the palette, which is a beautiful warm rose toned. I actually find myself reaching for it a lot, which is surprising because it's a pink in the end. And as a dupe, I found Tuscan Sun to be quite similar by Makeup Geek. Again, this is one of their new rebranded eyeshadows, and it is a little bit more pink and brighter, so there's a touch less gray in Tuscan Sun, but yeah, I think it's close enough. It's the closest I could find in my collection. I don't have a ton of pinks, as you know, but I think this was quite close anyways. Now to the culprit, or the only shade that I don't love in this palette, which is Evergreen. And I don't know, you guys, it's like a dirty green. It is duochrome to an extent, in the sense that I can see there's a more neutral base with this sage green shimmer on top, but it's nothing special. I don't know. Can you see it? Also, I mean on my eyes, but you can't see like the duochrome on my eyes at all. It looks like just a shimmer, and could have been better. I have nothing similar in my collection, but I put in from Colourpop Tea Garden. It's warmer, it's shinier, and it's a little bit more, how do you call it? It's more of an acid green versus, it's lighter and more, I don't know, different than the one in the palette, but it will work well with all of the shades that are in this palette as well. I think, yeah, if only this would have been like a different finish, I don't know, it should have been different. The idea is nice to have a sage green, but let me show you. From the Mandalorian palette, there is one that I really love that I was talking about in my review, which is called Right Hand Mando, this one right here. Another shade I didn't have anything like in my collection. And this is a bright shade, bright sage green. Now, this has some texture, you can see the shine difference. If she had done the same thing with a bit of a deeper color, it would have been so much better. I don't know, I'm so sad. I wish I loved this as much as I love the rest of the shadows in this palette, but I just don't. So that one is Evergreen. Moving on to the next shade, which is the Gold Shimmer. As I said, this is incredible. It is called West Coast, and it is a brilliant warm gold. I actually looked through my whole collection of singles and I don't have anything exactly like this, either deeper or more yellow. This, I had to go to my Natasha Denona Gold palette to pull out the dupe, and it is the shade Oro from that palette. As you can see, very similar. Oro is maybe a little bit deeper, but it's there, it's up there with Natasha Denona, and that is what I wanted the previous shimmer to be as well. That's all I was asking for. I mean, they made it with the gold, why couldn't they have made it with the green, with the sage green shade? Anyways, I've said my part on that shade. Next up is the chocolatey brown, and it is just so beautiful. It's called Homegrown, and it's this reddish brown shade that actually I had a bit of a tough time duping, and I found Facet from Colourpop, which is this guy right here. Very similar, maybe a touch lighter, but I also think it depends on my swatching probably. But they're very, very similar, and a beautiful, beautiful warm shade. Look at how nicely it goes with that gold. Also, what I didn't mention on the gold is that it fits so well with all of the deep mattes that are in this palette. It's the perfect shimmer for this palette. If only that green would have been a hit. Anyways. Next up is the berry in the palette, and it's the shade, maybe I can still fit it here, Amanita. This one is the only one with an asterisk, which I think means it's a pressed pigment and not an eyeshadow, because it's probably one of the lake pigments that in the US are not suited for the eye area. They are allowed in Europe and in other parts of the world though, I think. And yeah, it's a beautiful berry. When I used it, it did stain my lids a little bit. I don't mind too much. It doesn't really give me a lot of problems. I don't have sensitivity. I don't get reactions from the lake pigments. But if you do, just keep that in mind. They have an asterisk next to the name, so you know it. What I picked as a dupe is Sleeper by Colourpop, which is also a similar shade. Wait, here we go. It's not an exact dupe, but I also don't expect the palette to be dupeable by Colourpop singles. I mean, that would be stupid. Amanita is a bit more red and less purple than Sleeper. So here you have it. They're, for all intents and purposes, they're similar enough for you. If you have one, you don't need the other, but they're not exact dupes. Now for the surprising one, which is Fiddlehead, which is the olive green shade in the palette. This one has a surprising amount of yellow in it that makes it difficult to to dupe. It's more of an army green then, rather than an olive. I don't know, the difference is very subtle in names. The closest thing that I found, which swatches horribly for some reason, I hope it's not going bad, but it's Leo by Melt Cosmetics in the Gemini palette. Now, I have no idea why this isn't swatching properly, but it's the closest eyeshadow that I found to it, and it's still not yellow enough, Leo. So this one here. The other greens in my collection, like Team Captain from Colourpop or Radical by what is it called, Nabla Cosmetics, also my new Glam Shop single, which is called Marinated Peas, they are all slightly off, either a bit too cool toned or not deep enough. This is quite unique in my collection, incredibly so. There is a unique green that I don't have. Can you imagine? Another green in the palette, which is called Emerald City, that I love, is also a shade that I don't have an exact dupe for. This is Emerald City, and it's really a forest green. I have Eden by Lethal Cosmetics, but it's a touch lighter, same undertone, a touch lighter. And then I have Squad by Colored Rain. This is part of their Vivid Pigments. And Eden, as I said, is a bit lighter, and Squad is a little bit cooler toned, but they are all quite similar, I would say. Does the same thing. Eden, you can also deepen up quite well, and in my palette I put Squad just because it's already deeper, and you can see that Squad is cooler toned, but it's really easily influenced by what is around it, so it will look more green if you put more green around it, or more warm tones around it. So I think that is a good enough dupe. I just don't want to wipe this off, it's so beautiful. Last official matte of the palette is PNW, which is Pacific Northwest, which is a beautiful deep blue teal. It's what I'm wearing on the outer corner of my eyes today, and I have two dupes for it. One of it is Time Travel by Makeup Geek. You can see that it's a little bit more blue than Pacific Northwest, and the other one is Inglot number 340, which is now everywhere on me, and that one is a little bit still more blue but more gray. So I would pick Time Travel because I prefer more saturated colors, but they're all very close to each other. The differences are small. Let's just put it that way. The differences are very small. I know if you want to be nitpicky, you can, and I'm just going the closest that I can. The final color in the palette is Let It Rain, which is a very dark, I think browny gray with a copper glitter. I mean, I can see it if I look close. I can see the copper glitter, and you probably can see a touch of warmth in the eyeshadow swatch. But to me, the way I use it is actually to either deepen the outer corner or do a little bit of an eyeliner. Yeah, you can do it as a base for another topper on top, but to me, these shades are pointless. All of the Colourpop shadows that are mattes with a little bit of shimmer, to me, are pointless. Sorry, guys. I picked a black for here, and this is Nabla Pitch Black. You can go with the darkest brown that you have, you can go with the darkest, maybe warm gray that you have, but I don't think there exists an exact dupe to this black with copper glitters, and they're so tiny. They're like really, really tiny shimmers. Probably would have been amazing if they were just a shimmer by itself without the black base, or a very, very shiny shimmer on a darker base. Like I'm thinking these like Steampunk by Makeup Geek, that is very dark base but this amazing shimmer on top. Anyways, that was that. Those were my dupes for the palette. Let me know down below if it helped you, what shades you actually wanted to see, and you wanted duped of this palette, that for example aren't something that you're gonna use. I know some people don't use the greens and blues, for example, but the rest of the palette was interesting to them. And I am curious to hear your thoughts on the palette. Did you buy it? Do you like it? I don't know. I'm maybe a little bit biased because I do really like the color story and I do like Colourpop's formula. But they did a really good job on this. I mean, there's Colourpop shadows that were awful and I've decluttered them, but these ones are all pretty epic. I'm just a bit sad of this shimmer right here, which is not as punchy, as interested in that as I wanted it to be, but nonetheless, I think Kristi did a really, really good job with the color story for this palette and the formulas of these dark mattes that can be very tricky to make and yeah, shouldn't be maybe. But yeah, that was that for this video. Thank you so much for watching and don't forget to subscribe if you're not already. I am trying to put 3 videos out a week this month and as far as I actually can. It used to be what I used to do, but then sickness and just holiday and heat and not wearing makeup came into the picture, and I have kind of a deadline at the end of March, after which I might not be able to do my makeup for a little while with a squealing child. It's gonna be a child, not a dog. It's a child. Anyways, thank you so much for all of your support. Love you to bits, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye guys.